Hello, class. We're about to start lesson 3 from chapter 4, and we're actually on page 287. Let me repeat that. We're on page 287, which is, well, I'm sorry, actually page 286. We're actually on page 286, which is the title lesson here, lesson 3, circle graphs. Okay, so it says a circle graph is used to show how a whole amount is broken into parts. The sections of a circle graph are often labeled with percents. The size of each section corresponds to the fraction it represents. For example, a section labeled 25% is 1/4 of the circle. Example 1. The graph below shows how a children's sports camp spends its weekly budget. Now, if you notice here, this circle graph is broken up into percentages. And you see here for the bus is 28%, equipment 18%, and so on. It says, how much does the sports camp spend on lunches each week? Okay, so we see here is 35% for lunches. So it says, how much does a sport camp spend on lunches each week? Analyze the graph. According to the heading, the entire circle represents the camp's weekly budget of $2,250. And it says it right here, sports camp weekly budget is $2,250. Find the section labeled lunches. According to the section labeled, lunches make up 35% of the weekly budget. Use the data. To find the amount spent on lunches, find 35% of $2,250. Which we show here. And I would type it in your calculator just in case you need a refresher on how to type this in your calculator. You would type in 2,250 times 0.35. And then you'll press enter. And that will give you $787.50. Okay, now it says a circle graph may also be labeled using fractions or decimals. One common kind of circle graph labels each section in cents to show how a dollar is used. According to the graph, what percent of the average energy bill is spent on drying clothes, lighting, and heating water? So we look here, we have let's say drying clothes. Let's see, where is the drying? Clothes drying is 3 cents. Lighting is 5 cents. And heating water is 17 cents. So that's a total of 25 cents. So we come here, it says analyze the graph. The entire circle represents $1. The amounts in the sections mentioned in the problem are 3 cents, 5 cents, and 17 cents. Use the data. Add the amounts 3 cents, 5 cents, and 17 cents is equal to a quarter. Since a quarter is 25% of a dollar, 25% of an average bill is spent on these items. Now we come down here to the practice problems. Now I will tell you all this. For some reason, when I was scanning this page, some of the writing is a little blurry, as you all can see 4, 5, and 6, and right below it. So what you have to do, possibly, if you cannot see this, is just take out your textbook and turn to page 287, and you can read along with the problems. It says here for questions 1 through 3. Use the sports camp weekly budget circle graph on page 286. For questions 4 through 6, use the where do your energy dollars go circle graph on page 286. So number 1, what percent of the total sports camp budget is spent on equipment and umpires? So we go back up here. So we have umpires and sports equipment. All they want is, what is that percent? So we look down here. This is problem number 1. So with problem number 1, we have umpires, which is 11%. And then we have equipment, which is 18%. So we can add both of those together. 11% plus 18% gives us 29%. And that is your answer for number 1. Okay, now we scroll back down here. It says, what fraction of the sports camp budget is spent on permits? So they want the fraction of the sports camp budget is spent on permits. So we go here to permits, which is 8%. Now, so number 2 is 8%. Now we know that percent means over 100. So what we would have is 8 over 100. Now remember in our fraction section where we were able to simplify the fraction, we could divide the numerator and denominator by 4. And that would give us 2 over 25. So that is the fractional amount, which is 2/25. So that is your answer for problem number 2. Okay, now we scroll back down. So now we come to number 3. It says, what amount does the camp spend each week on busing? So now we're looking for a specific amount. So we want to know the amount spent on busing. So we go back up to the graph. And this is problem number 3. With problem number 3, we look at busing. It's 28%. But remember, the budget is $22.50. And we'll multiply it by the 28%, which is 0.28. So now we could take our calculator, because you already know how to multiply by hand a decimal. So we don't need to go over that. So let's multiply 2250 times 0.28. And that gives us $630. That is how much is spent on busing. Okay, now that took care of problems 1, 2, and 3. So now for problems 4, 5, and 6, they want us to use this other circle graph. Now again, because this did not copy well, you may have to read this out of your own textbook. So let me go over number 4. It says a family's energy bill is $180. Assuming the family's energy use is typical, how much did the family spend on water heating? So we will go back up here to water heating. Heating and air conditioning, water heating is 0.17. Now remember, that's 17 cents out of $1. So with that being 17 cents out of $1, that means that that is actually 17%. So the 0.17 is actually 17%. Okay, now they ask us how much the family's budget is $180. Assuming the family's energy use is typical, how much did the family spend on water heating? So what we would do is we would take this 17% or 0.17 and multiply it by the $180 because it's 17%. So actually I shouldn't have used the dollar. I should have just did, let me rewrite that. I should have just did 180 times 0.17 because remember it's 17%. So now we take our calculator. So we would have 180 times, well, I should have cleared this out. So we have 180 times 0.17. And that gives us $30.60, which would be our final answer. Okay, so now that took care of problem number 4. Now we scroll back down. Let me clear this out. To problem number 5. It says, which section is greater than 50% of an energy dollar? Let's scroll up here to this graph here. It says which section is greater than 50%. Now we know the amounts we have here, we would just change to percents. So the one of these that will be greater than 50%, we can look at the graph and we see that this is more than half of it, because we know 50% is half. So it has to be more than half to be more greater than 50%, and that would be heating and air conditioning. So they ask us which section is greater. So then we would say, for number 5, we would say heating and air conditioning. That would be our section for number 5, is heating and air conditioning. Okay, now we scroll down to problem number 6. It says, which energy cost is about 1/10 of the energy dollar? Okay, so now what we have to do is determine what 1/10 is. Now, if we change 1/10 to a decimal, let's do this. First, let's pull up this calculator. And let's do the fraction. We could put 1 down arrow 10 and press enter. Oh, it just gives us the decimal. So what we would have to do is clear this out. We hit N over D. We hit 1 down arrow 10. And then the right arrow. Then you will press second. And then this F to D, that means fraction of decimal. And then you'll press enter. So that's 0.1, which is 0.10. So with number 6, we know this is 0.10. And we know according to our table here that whatever decimal we get, that is the actual dollar amount or change amount that we see here. So they said which one of these is about 1/10. So if we look here, the closest one to 1/10 is 0.11. So for number 6 is cooking and refrigeration. So that is the answer for number 6. Is cooking and, oh wait a minute, I need to move this over. Number 6, we know that it was 0.10, but it's cooking and refrigeration is your final answer. All right. So now that took care of problems 1 through 6. Now we go down here to problems 7 and 8. It says choose the one best answer to each question. Questions 7 and 8 refer to the following graph. Time spent on task by records clerk, Woods County Recorder's Office. Okay, now it says here, during a 40-hour work week, how many hours does a record clerk spend preparing documents? So we see preparing documents here is 25%. So what we would do here, since that is 25% for number 7, we would take the, it says a 40-hour week, so we had to take 40 and multiply that by the 25% as a decimal. So a 40-hour week and it's 25% is preparing documents. So now let me scoot this paper over so I can pull up our calculator. And we could take, let's clear this out. We could take 40 times 0.25. And that would give us 10. So it's 10 hours that's spent. So that would be A. All right. So that took care of problem number 7. Now we go to problem number 8. It says, what percent of records clerk time is spent on tasks other than data entry? So now, we want to know the percentage that everything else takes up aside from data entry. So first, let's find data entry. Data entry is 44%. Now, if you add all these percentages up, it's supposed to equal 100%, because 100% is all the time that you give, unless you get overtime. So with that being said, what we would need to do to find the percentage for number 8, we would take 100% minus the 44% for data entry. So we know our answer is going to be in a percentage. So we would have to borrow 1 from this 1. The 0 would become 10. We'll borrow 1 from this 10. That becomes 9. And this last 0 becomes 10. 10 minus 4 is 6. 9 minus 4 is 5. And then 0 minus 0 is 0. So our answer here is 56%, which is D. So that takes care of problem number 8. Now, we move on over to problems 9 and 10. It says questions 9 and 10 refer to the following graph. Now again, like we did with problems, what was that, 4, 5, and 6, it's a little blurry here, so you would need your textbook to read these questions. So, it says the employee of National Bank are given the following graph to explain how their retirement fund is invested. Now it says how your retirement dollar is invested. Now if you notice here, they use the word cents behind the number. And we know cents mean 100 out of 100. Just like you got 1 cent, is 1 cent is 1 out of 100 that would make $1. So that 30 cents is really like 30%. That 3 cents is really 3%. 40 cents is like 40%, and so on. When you add all of these up, they equal to 100. 100 cents, $1, 100%. Okay, now look at number 9. It says, what percent of each retirement dollar is invested in real estate and the stock market? So if we look at real estate and the stock market, just give me 1 second. Okay, here we go. All right, so this is problem number 9. Okay, the real estate is 7 cents and the stock market is 3 cents. So we know that's a total of 10 cents. Now remember, I told you that this 10 cents is really a percent. So this is really 10%, which is B. So your answer here is B for number 9. Okay, now for number 10, it says Steve contributes $120 of each paycheck to his National Bank retirement fund. How much of each contribution is invested in public bonds? Okay, so if you notice here, public bonds is 40 cents. And then he invests $120. So we have to take 40% out of the $120 for problem number 10. So for problem 10, we would take our $120 and multiply it by the 40%. Now we could take our calculator. So we have 120 times 0.40. And that gives us $48. So that's how much is invested in the public bonds, which is C. Okay, now we are done with this lesson here, and I will upload this to YouTube. And I want you all to have a wonderful day.